Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, right? Very, very cool idea. I'm curious, why did you choose this approach? Does the university make you feel small sometimes?
I think I just wanted to give the player an option to explore.
Okay.
The idea of a different perspective on the same area.
Yeah, let's see the same area that you've known for a long time, but from a different angle, okay? If you ever see an ant or a little bug walking along the floor, you wonder, what's the life like to them, yeah? What's the lab like? Looking at us up there, all stressed out with our projects, and the bug is just chilling, looking for some chow. What else we got? What are you working on? Sean?
Still thinking of stuff.
Still thinking of stuff, so you haven't started the P1 Gold yet. Okay. Anyone else? What do you got? Yes?
I'm thinking of making the whole room composite. So the computers will start glitching out and the whiteboard will look help me like a horror movie.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so it's kind of like a bizarro a laboratory, right? So what causes you to enter that kind of alternate dimension?
I was thinking, because I wanted to start with the whiteboard saying help me, so maybe they did a certain shape on the whiteboard.
Ooh, okay. Shape detection? Very tricky, not impossible, especially if you simplify it. Sounds awesome. Sounds super cool. All right, good. So remember, when you are making these custom interactions, these custom objects, you have basically all the agency in the world to make something that you want. How do you make that choice, though? Well, I would encourage you to think about what has your life as a CSE student been like. Okay, has it been hectic? Well, can you make an interaction that expresses that? Have you really enjoyed the power you feel from the knowledge you're getting? Make something that expresses that. Do you feel like you're always being hunted down by never-ending deadlines in all your courses? Maybe make something horror-based, okay? But whatever it is, I encourage you to think about how you feel about all this, all right? And show the world by putting it into your VR experience, okay? In that way, it will live forever. Your own little essay on what CSE was like for you. How many of you are graduating at the end of this semester? Congratulations, that's fantastic, okay? So it really is time for a lot of you to think about what it has all meant, all right? And hopefully you enjoy doing so. Hopefully it's not too stressful. You've got 7 days remaining. That's plenty of time, I think, for most of these teams to get stuff done. We've got some new assignments, right, that have released. P1 Gold released. We talked about that. P2 Culture 2, okay? Usually at the end of each video film session, I give a hint as to what the next film is. This time I didn't, okay? Did anyone look? Which film will you be watching next? Now, I said that we would be watching, impactful films related to VR and AR, okay? I didn't necessarily say they would be the best films. I don't like this next film, spoiler alert, but I think that a lot of people love this next film because our next film is Tron. Have any of you seen the original Tron? This is a kind of 80s era film, okay? This was about 20 years before The Matrix was created. Computers and software were so early. They're in their infancy. And people didn't know how to talk about what software was. You want to make a movie about software. Well, who are our characters going to be, okay? How do we explain to people, to cinema goers, what a program is? Okay, what is I/O, input, output? Why does it matter? Okay, and when you watch this film, I think that's the most interesting part of it. You're going to find that the writers and directors of this film, they're struggling with this idea of what is software and how do we personalize it? Okay, how do we get a human being to root for a chunk of software? What does that even mean? Well, they do figure it out. They do try some interesting things, and they mess some things up, and they nail some things, and I hope you enjoyed the film. We're probably going to watch it about 1 week from now, actually. To celebrate the conclusion of P1 Gold, no lecture, we will watch Tron together. And a reminder, if you cannot join us for that film, you can still get credit by writing a not too difficult essay just to verify some things that you've watched it. Okay? So, pretty good stuff. I think you'll enjoy the film if for no other reason than it's a very important film. Okay? One of the earliest usages of computer graphics in film. So I've got a company for you, like I always do. This is a company called Relax VR. Okay? Now, I like to show you a lot of companies in this course that are doing really impactful work that really means a lot. Sometimes to a big audience, sometimes to a very niche audience. And then sometimes I like to show you companies that have just a wild and wacky idea that they're using XR with, okay? And I'm going to let you decide which one of those two categories this one falls into. This is a company in San Francisco, and I don't know how much money they've been given, but this is VR experiences for spas. Does anyone else, when you think about relaxing, does anyone else just think about strapping something heavy to their face? Well, anyway, okay. Maybe I'm spoiling my opinion of this. VR for spas. Use virtual reality, meditation, aromatherapy, and binaural beats to provide a deeply immersive relaxation experience. Do you know what binaural means? It sounds very fancy. Very fancy word. What does it mean?
Isn't it when you play two different sounds and it creates this like double effect? It's weird.
No, it literally just means you put headphones on and you're hearing it out of two ears. That's it. But it's a very fancy way to say that, right? So this is a company that has been seen on Forbes, Day Spa, Well Spa, and Hotel Designs. That does not mean that these are paying clients, and that's a big difference, okay? These companies have tried to put them out there and have advertised this company and their ideas. That doesn't mean that they have a lot of consistent business. Let's go ahead and watch this video to get a feel for what this software and product is.
Relax VR's virtual reality technology takes you on a meditation retreat in a peaceful location of your choice.
I felt like I was really somewhere else. I was in awe, and it was really relaxing as well.
Our clients love Relax VR. It takes you to a totally different world.
Pretty incredible. I'm hovering above the moon.
Relax VR uses the latest virtual reality technology, and we combine it with proven meditation techniques to make you feel relaxed, like you're on vacation.
That was amazing. It was really incredible to be totally immersed in that environment. I've never seen Northern Lights, but looking at it in the VR simulation, it looked exactly like how I imagined it to be.
There's decades of research showing how great virtual reality is in reducing stress and anxiety. It's the perfect tool to combine with meditation to help people relax.
I don't practice meditation regularly because it is very difficult to do. With the VR headset, it was much easier to do. You have this beautiful environment around you and it takes you out of your mind more.
This is a very healing device. I also connect people with nature using essential oils during the massage. So I can see this being paired with essential oils. Each location would have a different oil.
We found it very, very easy to use. It works as a touch of a button. It's really easy to treat people. It's really easy to operate.
Relax VR is an immersive standalone experience and blends beautifully with traditional therapies to take your spa experience above and beyond.
So I really love the suggestion of like combining this with essential oils. So I love the idea of like put a bunch of oil on your face and then just like kind of smush it into the headset, right? Maybe the headset you're handed has oils from the previous person on it. Oh goodness, that sounds like just a great time. Shout outs to the return of smell-o-vision, right? So aromatherapy. The idea here is that we're going to put our users Okay, don't laugh about this. This is serious business. We're going to put our users into a spa-style experience in the headset. Very calming, water. You'll hear that, right? But we're also going to try and get some scents going in front of you. You can't see us, and so we can set these scents up and make it so that you're going to smell the seaside beach, right? You're going to smell the water coming in. And so I really don't mean to make fun of the company, right? It is an interesting idea, and I'm glad that they gave it a shot. I would, I don't think it's going to work out for them, but maybe it will. You can see, now I'm not sure if these are genuine visitors. Often, and I've unfortunately seen this with local startups that I have insider information on, the startups will create footage like this, and you'll discover later that this is the CEO of the company. Now, technically, they're not lying. He is visiting the spa that he owns, okay? Anyway, right, no, this is the CEO right here, Sorba. Anyway, kind of an interesting product, and imagine for a moment that you want to have a spa shop. You want to have a spa setup. You are an entrepreneur, but land is super expensive. You don't have enough land. You don't have the budget to create a great environment like you would in a normal spa. So what can you do? Maybe this kind of software and hardware combination allows you to kind of create a spa-like experience that costs less, uses less space, and you can bring people in for that. I don't know. A quick question, and this relates to something that we talked about earlier. Is Relax VR a hardware manufacturer in the VR space? Did they manufacture and design this headset? Is that in the budget for their startup? They custom-tuned this headset to be perfect for spa goers in particular. What is it called when a company purchases an unbranded product specifically designed to slap their own logo on? What is that called? White label, exactly. And there are a lot of companies that are out there. Typically, white label companies do not sell directly to consumer, which is why you might not interact with companies that sell this stuff. But they're out there, and if you are an entrepreneur, you know who to go talk to, okay, to get this kind of stuff. I think I did get the pricing and package info. I emailed them like a few years ago, and they sent it to me. They have an interesting little experience here that kind of shows you what it might feel like.
Become aware of your breath, the natural breath. Feel the breath flowing in and out of the nostrils, observing the abdomen and chest as they move on each inhalation and exhalation.
Oh, and then it's finished. This is using 360-degree video, okay? That's why the aesthetics, the graphics are so good. What is one of the downsides of using 360-degree video instead of a recreated virtual space? Yes? Well, here, the quality looks great, right? The visuals are fantastic, but there are certain things you can't do, right? Yes?
You only have 1 degree of freedom.
3 degrees of freedom. So you can rotate however you want, right? No big deal. The problem is you can't do any translation. So you're missing translation on the X, the Y, and the Z axis. So if you are in a VR headset and you see this footage, if you move your head at all, you will begin to get sick. Because you will be moving your head, your body knows that you are moving your head, and yet your vision isn't changing. Your body thinks you've been poisoned. Okay? Anyway, if you look at the website, you can get a feel for their business model real quick. Differentiate yourself from the competition, okay? Other spas don't have this high-tech approach. Maybe you can attract customers and attention if you do. Even if you don't use it a ton, you can use it in advertising and stuff like that. Boost profits with minimal efforts. Labor costs, you don't need nearly as many, right? If you just put someone in a headset and they have a relaxing time, okay? Low-touch treatment. So if there is a pandemic or COVID, or if people are worried about illness, you don't interact with a ton of humans here, right? You put the headset on, as long as it's sterilized and cleaned, you should be okay, all right? Beats, landscaped, guided meditations, aromas, okay? All that good stuff. So, who is the customer of this startup? Who do they sell to? The end users? Do they have their own spa goers who are going to come and put on a VR headset? They might, but they probably don't have many. Who are the actual customers for this company? Yes?
It might be more like a business-to-business sort of relationship.
Bingo. Bingo. You nailed it. Well done. This is a company that wants to sell you a package, okay? And actually, they responded to us, and I saved the PDF they sent me. They send you this PDF, and they explain basically why you should start a VR spa business or add this onto your existing spa business. They show you some of the cool footage they've got. Wineglass Bay, which we saw, but Northern Lights, that sounds amazing. Above the clouds, okay, some IFR flight right there. They send you a bunch of oils, okay? They will send you oils to use, and they'll even tell you kind of when you should use them. They send you audio tracks you can use. They have studies on Relax VR. I don't see a whole lot of details here. I don't see any links to any papers. But they did some stuff with the NHS. They just say a recent study was conducted, but they don't link to it. What does that tell you? Package benefits: quick and easy, hygienic, blue light free, marketing assistance, blah, 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 blah. Will help promote you, okay? Let's see, what else do we have? Protocols. So they have training protocols you can give to your employees so that you don't have to come up with them yourself. They recommend certain pricing points. So 30 minutes at about $35, 20 minutes of deep relaxation, cost per treatment $2. Example protocol, right? What you should do. This is what they send you: a Relax VR virtual reality headset. They don't tell you what kind of headset is here, but the specs, you might be able to use the specs to figure out what this is. 3 degrees of freedom, 75 hertz refresh rate. This sounds like, to me, like an Oculus Dev Kit 1 or 2. Probably Dev Kit 2, okay? But maybe 1, okay? Almost no headset has this low of a refresh rate these days. They'll send you oils, they'll send you a carrying case, they send you a Bose headset. That's kind of cool. They send you a bunch of release of liability form. They send you a form that you should have your customers sign so that the customer then can't sue you, okay? They have, I guess, figured out this is how customers might sue you. And they're going to help you protect yourself. That's kind of cool. Here's the pricing, okay? This is what they recommend, actually, you do, okay? They believe that monthly, if you do 2 treatments per week, you're going to make $360 monthly. You'll make all your money back in 3.2 months. You can rent this entire set, okay? You have to pay $700 initial fee and then $150 per month. Or you can buy it all permanently for $3,500, okay? How many of you are going to rush out to get this right now? Any of you? No? No. Yeah, I agree. It does not seem like a good business, in my opinion. They've got a bunch of facts here. You can read them if you want to. It's kind of funny. But anyway, what's your take on this? I know I kind of tainted your opinion maybe with my mockery of the company. I shouldn't be mocking the company. They gave it a good shot. Maybe it worked out, maybe it didn't. Yes?
I feel like the immersion in VR is so fragile that it's very hard to apply to something like meditation where you want to keep them focused on what they're doing. So if you hear even a snippet of a conversation outside of the VR headset, or there was that one clip they had where the lady was massaging her hand while she was in VR.
Yeah.
I feel like that takes you out of it so fast, and it's very hard to keep the illusion.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. These meditation sessions are 30 to 50 minutes long. You know what happens to your face after 30, 50 minutes with most headsets? I don't know if the Vision Pro maybe is built differently, but Imagine coming out of your spa with a gigantic red mark around your face like this. You probably wouldn't go back, would you? Yeah.
They're charging as much as like one of those Apple VR headsets for all of this, and that headset has a low refresh rate.
Yeah. Forget the Vision Pro, okay? 2025 is about the Relax VR headset, okay? The best tech. Okay, anyway, thank you for indulging my XR company. Just keep this in mind, okay? Right? It's worthwhile to go experiment with new technologies, but eventually you do want to call it a day, and you want to see when things aren't really working. I don't think this company is going to work. They've been around for years. Hopefully they're not still consuming resources. Anyway, yeah, that's the situation. Okay, today what I'd like to do, and this is going to be a shorter lecture, okay? That's just kind of how new courses go for me. It takes a long time to develop lecture content. But what I really want to do today is I want to kind of walk you through, now that you're kind of getting more familiar with how the software side of things works, how you build software for VR. I want to walk you through how the hardware works. And this is going to be at kind of a high level. This is not a hardware course, but we're going to walk you through the history of VR and how it has kind of morphed its hardware in order to solve a lot of the problems that early VR had, okay? VR really has moved a great deal. Even today, you will see patents flying. Well, this isn't today, it's 2021, but you'll see patents flying on ways to do interesting new things with VR headsets. When you think about how a VR headset works, okay, from the very kind of lowest level, it uses a technique we talked about briefly in the first lecture. It uses a technique called stereoscopy, okay? Take your two eyes and ask yourself, why have two? Do you just want to have a spare? Well, that's part of it. It's very important, okay, your sense of vision. But having two eyes is really valuable, especially if those two eyes are in different locations, okay? Because what you see from each eye will tell you something. You see a different image in each eye, okay? You've got one eye, you've got a second eye, and what will happen is when you look at an object, actually, I want to do an experiment, okay? All of you look at something nearby. I'm going to look at my mouse right in front of me. Look at something very close to you. And now, open one eye and close the other. Then I want you to switch from eye to eye, eye to eye, eye to eye. This object that is very nearby, what does it do as you go from eye to eye? You close one eye, open the other. You close that eye, open the other. What does the object do or appear to do?
The angle changes a bit.
Yeah, the angle changes and the object moves, right? If you're really close to an object and you open and close the other eye, the object like visibly warps, okay? Like that. Now, I want you to do the same experiment, but this time we are looking at something far away. Look at something on the other end of the room. I'm going to look at that poster way over there on the pillar and do the same thing. Open one eye, close the other, and then go between them. It moves, but it doesn't move nearly as much, does it? Distant objects are going to be affected much less in your perception of them by your two eyes, okay? Objects that are much closer have a much different vision, a much different kind of view of that nearby object. And so you can say this. If you take the two images your eye is producing and those two images are very different, what does that tell you about the object?
It's closer to you.
It's very close to you. If you have two different images coming from two different eyes, and they're basically the same image, that tells you that the object is very far away, okay? And this is kind of how it works, okay? Right here with Zuckerberg, okay? When you open and close your eyes, nearby objects will move a great deal, okay? So let's talk about that, depth and stereoscopy. Two eyes means two slightly different images. And the brain uses this fact to calculate depth, to judge depth. I have some friends who have gone down to basically only being able to see in one eye. And one of the impacts there is that depth is not impossible to judge, but it's harder. It's more ambiguous. It makes your brain work harder to figure out where is something. And in certain circumstances, you just can't actually figure out where that thing is. It's ambiguous. It could be multiple places. You play catch with only one eye open, and you're going to struggle, okay? You probably will have the ball hit your face a few times, all right? Close objects, the views are very different. Far objects, the views are very similar. This is a binocular cue. It uses two eyes to give you a strong hint as to where something is located, okay? And this is how viewfinders work, okay? These viewfinders, when you look through the lenses, they're showing you the same image, but actually slightly altered for each eye. This allows you to look at basically a flat little image, and it seems as if it's a 3D object, okay? This isn't possible for traditional 2D video games and traditional film, okay? What's a film people have been watching? What's a big popular film right now? Anyone? I got to get back into film. Nothing? Yes. Okay. Nosferatu film. Okay. Let's see here. Horror. Okay. Here is an image. And I want to ask you, is this image right here? No, don't email it. What's going on? Oh no. Okay. Is this, it's back. What is going on? Whoa. Okay. Is this image 3D or is it 2D? I got a 2 just went up. Anyone want to say this is a 3D image? Okay, 3D, 2D, 3D. This image, it kind of depends on what you mean by 2D and 3D. Okay, when you look into it, you perceive objects that are 3D. You can kind of figure that this is a 3D scene, okay? Your mind's eye can see the 3D, can peek around the corner, can walk into it. But you can't really get the same sense of depth that you would if you saw this in VR, okay? You can't reach out and touch it, okay? You can't actually look forward and around the corner. This is a 2D image that is representing a 3D world, okay? How do you know that this is a 3D world inside of this 2D image? What gives you a cue? It is, after all, literally just a 2D array of pixels. It is 2D. It's a 2D image. But it feels 3D. Why?
Light, shadows, color.
Bingo. Light, shadows, color. These are things that will still be there if you only have one eye instead of two. Okay? You can cover one eye and, yeah, you can still tell all of this is a 3D scene. You can figure out what it is in your head. Okay? These shadows, light, color are all monocular cues. Okay? And they work together. Let's go ahead and keep going real quick. So, not possible for traditional 2D video games, that sense of depth, because a 2D video game or a 2D film on a monitor will show you an image that is meant to be a 3D scene, but it is in fact only a 2D image, okay? And it shows the same image to both eyes, okay? That's a big deal. I've got an example for you that's kind of fun here. We are going to play a 3D game. Except it's a 3D game, but we only have a 2D view into it. So I need a volunteer. Sean, would you like to? Okay. So do your best. This is Rollerball from EECS 494. And I want you to ask yourself, how do you know where you are in 3D space? How do you know where you are going to land when your jump ends? Arrow keys and spacebar. This is not super easy, by the way.
Wow. Wait, what? Oh, wow.
What's your favorite game genre?
I only play 2D games.
Only 2D games. Okay, maybe that explains it. So, everyone, while Sean does some platforming here, how do you know where the ball is in 3D space? How do you know where it's going to come down? Yeah, it's got shadow directly under it. Now, there's one other way. The camera, when it is sitting on the ground, the ball is usually where in the camera? The center. That's really useful because guess what I'm about to do? Go for it.
Oh no. Whoa. Whoa.
Without the shadow, you lose one of your important monocular cues to understand where the ball is in 3D space. Now, you can still make this work. Thank you, Sean. You can still make this work. It is still possible. Why? Well, you have another monocular cue, right? When the player is on the ground, usually the player is in the middle of the camera. And so the camera will tell you roughly where you're going to come down. But when you're changing elevation, it becomes a bit harder, okay? But it can still be done. Your brain has to work harder, right? It gets a bit less comfortable. The gameplay starts to feel less fun, okay? You have to think way harder. Okay, these are monocular cues, okay? The shadows, the positioning of the camera, all right, that help us judge depth in games that are only 2D. Shadows, blurriness on the horizon, parallax, okay, stuff like that. A question, is this ball right here in 3D space, or is the ball super big in front of your eye? Without the shadow, you can't quite tell, okay? It's ambiguous. It could be in multiple places, multiple depths in 3D space, which is why if you look at this image for too long, it starts to mess with you a bit, okay? Anyway, if you ever play games like Dark Souls, very famous adventure game, okay? Games really like to do things with depth of field. It's an effect that basically says, let's take any pixels on our render that have been sourced from far away. So basically, far away in the depth buffer, the Z buffer, and we're going to say, we're going to actually mush those. We're going to blur those. Okay, that is one way you can indicate that something is far away into the distance. For an adventure game where you're meant to go have a sense of mystery about things in the distance, right? You make this blurry so that the player knows there's something over there, but they can't get the details. So how do you get the details? You have to actually go there. And that's your incentive to explore the world, okay? You can't just explore the world by just looking around into the distance. You have to go there eventually, okay? So monocular cues do a good job. They get the job done, but full immersion requires more than that, okay? So if we have traditional, 2D media, how do we add binocular cues? How do we add a sense of depth in, okay? Well, we can go back to what the ViewMaster did. We can say, we're going to compute and then present each eye with a different image, a slightly different image. By the way, this is a huge annoyance to optimizing engineers. You know why? We have to compute and render two different images, but they're so similar, right? Okay, and it's hard. There are ways to optimize that, but not completely. So anyway, 1939, the ViewMaster is created. And, it's a popular toy, okay? It does basically what we're going to try and do now. 1995, the Virtual Boy is created with a lot of the same ideas. It even has the same color scheme. Anyone know or hear about the Virtual Boy? Okay. A glorious disaster. We are very used to 6 degrees of freedom in this class. Rotation on all 3 axes, and then translation on all 3 axes, right? You know how many axes, how many degrees of freedom the Virtual Boy has? 0. Okay, you cannot move in the Virtual Boy. Okay, so this thing isn't just strapped to your face, it straps you down. All right, not super pleasant. This would come on a stand, and you can see kind of where the stand would plug in down here. And you would kind of lean up to it and kind of put your face into it. Not a pleasant experience. Another interesting thing, it looks kind of cool in my opinion, right? It looks like a super high-tech visor, but it was not all that cool. When you looked through these lenses, you would get a slightly different image of the software being played. So you had a sense of depth. That's great. The problem, though, okay, that's what it looked like. The problem, though, is that the Virtual Boy only rendered in black and red. Every single game looked awful. And actually, the hardware came with warnings not to be used on, with children under the age of something like 16, because if used for too long, more than 30 minutes, it might cause permanent vision damage, and your vision might not develop the way that it should. So, that's a bit of an issue for a children's toy. You're going to buy that for the holidays for little Timmy and Sally? I don't think so, okay? It was a tremendous flop, and Nintendo refuses to talk about it to this day. So 2013, we get something new. Virtual reality keeps coming. People want this. People are excited about the prospect of being able to live a virtual world. But every time it comes, it kind of fails a bit. But the next wave is even more successful. In 2013, we would get our biggest breakthrough, our strongest wave yet for VR. We would get the Oculus Dev Kit 1, all right? And I would get my head cut off in a guillotine simulator, okay? And be forever changed. This device had 3 degrees of freedom, and that was a really big deal, okay? That was, for a while, all anyone thought they need. So released in 2013, it had a 1280 by 800 resolution screen. Now, your old 1920 by 1080 monitor on your old laptop has a higher resolution screen than this. And this is like duct taped to your face, okay? Inches away from your eyeballs. So you're going to see a ton of blurriness. In this era, you could barely kind of see, you could barely tell what you were looking at in some cases. I remember it pretty clearly, ironically, the screen door effect. This is kind of sort of what it looked like, okay? Imagine putting your eyeballs up to this image. You can sort of make up that this is a fountain, right? But you can see every individual pixel. And you see the lines between them. So it looks like you're viewing the world through a screen door. Okay? It was not super pleasant. Not super pleasant at all. This was later improved to like 4K. I think even Apple Vision Pro has something like 8K in each eye or something like that. Very, very high resolution, very smooth. It's quite nice in these headsets. Okay? They had a 60 hertz refresh rate. They may have chosen this just because, that's a very typical refresh rate for monitors. It was easy to get the hardware, right? Easy to source the hardware. But 60 hertz is really common and good enough for video games, but it's not usually good enough for VR, okay? For VR, right, you typically want something much better, something like 75 or better 90 hertz. And so these early dev kits produced an enormous amount of motion sickness for their users. It was very common to get sick after even a few minutes of using these things. It would later be standardized at kind of 90 hertz. That's very typical, okay? No external sensors could be found on this headset, which was nice. You didn't have to set a bunch of stuff up, right? The problem with this, though, is that without external sensors, the engineers couldn't really figure out how to detect that you were moving through 3D space, actually translating. Okay? There was, I believe, a gyro to detect that you were rotating your head. But if you ever walked around or moved your head, translated it, then you would start to get sick. Okay? It was not so great. Oh, it had a gyrometer. Yeah, gyrometer. It did not have any onboard computing either. So if you wanted to use this device, you had to have an expensive gaming machine, okay? And if you look at these prices, the cheapest, crappiest builds for gaming machines, like $700, $800, okay? That is some serious coin, and that's for a fairly weak machine as well. You want a heavy-duty one, you're easily getting into the thousands, all right? So you can see here that, like, we got some problems, okay? We also have this gigantic kind of clumsy box, okay, to get us HDMI, DVI out ports, okay? It was kind of nasty. We got a nasty cable going on here, all right? You can tell why early VR headsets would not take off, okay? These were devices that demanded a lot from you, and they didn't give much. The only thing they could offer was a novel experience, but not necessarily a good one, all right? But for some people, that was good enough, all right? They needed the novelty, and so they went and got it. Now, the DK1, released in 2013, would be upgraded very quickly by the DK2. Development Kit 2, this is actually the one I first used, and it brought a lot of improvements right away, okay? Immediately, it had a much better resolution. It had a much better display. Now, 1920 by 1080 is not 4K for each eye, okay? It was a good improvement, though, okay? This improved the screen door effect. Things got less blurry. It moved up to a 75 hertz refresh rate, which was also a big deal. And it did have an external sensor, very fortunately, and this gave us 6 degrees of freedom. So finally, we could translate and move our heads around, and we could actually see that reflected in-game in the software. How did external sensors work, by the way? Anyone have an idea? Well, this is kind of what would happen. You'd be sitting there at your computer with your Oculus headset on, and this camera would be mounted onto maybe your monitor or your desktop or something in front of you. This camera would be able to sense your headset as it moved. It would do this via infrared tracking, okay? And this is super cool footage. The Oculus headsets, sometimes it looks like there's nothing on the outside. You see these little dimples, and you wonder what it's for. Well, what's happening here is that these are actually tracking the infrared lights, and the camera is able to see this stuff, okay? As you watch these lights move, you probably have an idea of what the 3D shape is, right? And how it's moving, okay, over time. I want you to notice that there's a lot of noise here, right? So you can see many of these sensors, but sometimes they just freak out, right? Do you see these sensors kind of jumping around, hopping around? The camera sometimes struggles to figure out where these things are. But most of these sensors are good at any given time, and as they rotate, it provides you a sensation of the overall object rotating. And so that's how you can use sensors and computer vision to basically figure out how things are moving in 3D space. Really cool stuff. But it still requires that gaming machine. It's still not a great refresh rate, okay? Still needs cables, still needs this nasty camera, right? So, big problem. No one is buying these headsets, okay? A few enthusiasts are doing so, but they're very expensive, and they're a huge pain, okay? A huge pain. Too expensive, headsets were relatively new, and they typically costed like $500 to $600. That is on top of the gaming machines you need to have, and a lot of people did not. Okay, external sensors were also very expensive. I'm not sure how this ever worked, but for one of my early headsets that I had in 2019, 2020, like, you need to have base stations, these were called, okay? And those were sometimes several $100. Okay, you better not break them. Sometimes you need multiple of these just to get things working. Huge problem. Gaming PCs, as you saw, were required in this era, and they were very expensive, okay? This was also a lot of a very big price to pay for a very annoying experience, okay? External sensors had to be set up, I remember like going to Home Depot to get a 2x4, okay, so I could prop it up in my office so that I could get these base stations high enough. And then I had to route the cables around the outside of the room, kind of tape them up to make sure that they wouldn't get in the way or trip people, okay? Super annoying. I had to clear out a big space of my office just to be able to do VR in there, all right? Very, very non-portable. You've seen this image a few times, I think, right? So this is Dreamgate VR. Craig Albert, to set this up near Sears in Briarwood Mall, they had to do, I think it was about a 3-hour setup and like a 2-hour breakdown. So about 4 to 5 hours every single day, just taking stuff down, setting it up, taking stuff down, setting it up. Disaster. Very nasty. And they were very experienced with this stuff too. My setup in my basement, I eventually moved us to, looked like this, okay? I had to like bring a 2x4 down from the ceiling. Okay, had to get up there, put it up in the ceiling, and then route some of the wires around the seams in the ceiling here. And then, even then, when I walked around with my headset, I would trip on the cable sometimes, or it would get twisted around me. Okay, very annoying stuff. Cable management during gameplay was very scary. Okay, you have to look at how this cable is just kind of hanging on this poor fellow. It looks like it's just kind of weighing him down. It gets in the way. It's a tripping hazard. It can be dangerous. Okay. It also ties you very explicitly to the location of your PC. If someone wants to use your best PC, your best hardware in your entire house that day, well, like you're going to be in the way. Okay, you can't use VR when they're doing that. Very annoying. All right, and a lot of these problems, right, would go away. Okay, technological innovations to the hardware would solve a lot of these, and sales would correspondingly pick up, okay? Let's talk about the cable management first, all right? This is an HTC Vive with a wireless dongle on it, capable of basically beaming the data, video data, movement data, to your computer over a little dongle stick that you put in a USB port. Okay, very, very expensive. I think this cost like $300 or $400 to get this added on to your already expensive headset. HTC Vive wireless adapter. Okay, that is a quick and simple solution to the tripping hazard. And over time, more headsets would get things like Bluetooth and ways of doing stuff. These sensors were a huge problem. Okay, but eventually we would start to get interesting headsets like this. Do you see anything that really stands out on these headsets? What do you see? Yes? Yes, they have what appear to be lenses, and quite a few of them, okay? This is, I think, the Meta Quest, Oculus Quest. And they have, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4 cameras on the outside. This is the HTC Vive Cosmos, which unfortunately didn't really take off. I really love this like grill design and the color choice. But they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cameras. Maybe one's on the top and bottom too. Okay? And these cameras are there for a very big reason. Okay? A question. How do you know if you are moving through 3D space? If you're accelerating, you can feel it, right? Thanks to instruments in your ears. But if you're not accelerating, if you're just kind of constantly moving, right? You're in a car going the same speed down the street. How do you know that you're translating through 3D space? Basically, the only way you know is your vision. So a question then, if humans can just use a couple cameras on the front of our face to know that we're moving and how we're moving, whether we're rotating, we know that, whether we're translating, we know that, why can't we do the same with cameras on a device? What's the problem? Well, it turns out we definitely can, okay? Whereas previously we used external sensors to watch us and tell us how we are moving, how we are rotating. That's outside in, okay? Outside from the sensors inside. We now have inside out tracking, and it is the dominant form of tracking in the industry, okay? And the idea here is that the headset itself will be able to kind of look from the inside and figure out where it is outside, okay? It does this via the cameras, okay? This is how human positional tracking, for the most part, works as well. In the software side of things, this is how it works. It uses computer vision from all of these cameras to try and identify little pivot points, okay? Little anchor points in the environment. Often these are on interesting edges or seams or shapes or points. And what happens is, as the headset moves, most of these points can be re-identified, but they have also moved, okay? And the way that these reference points have moved tells us how the shape has moved. It's very similar to how that external sensor, infrared sensor, was working, the camera, right? We identify some points of interest, we watch over time how they move, and now we understand how we are moving, okay? And so we have that problem solved. We no longer need those super expensive sensors, which is super, super nice. Now, unfortunately, a big blocker is that you need to have a gaming machine, a gaming laptop or a gaming computer at home in order to actually use these devices, okay? But actually, that's no longer the case, all right? You see this cable coming off of the HTC Vive Cosmos? Well, Cosmos didn't make it. It didn't really succeed, and a big part of why it failed is this cable right here. It still had to be tethered to a PC. But the Meta Quest line does not need that. Why? Well, as it turns out, mobile chipsets have gotten super good, okay? Super, super good. This device right here, an early Quest, has a Snapdragon 835, which is better than, I would say, probably quite a few of our mobile phones that we have in our pockets today. This is better than the Nintendo Switch's chipset, okay? The Nintendo Switch, a 2017 gaming console that can run games like Breath of the Wild, has a Tegra X1 chip from NVIDIA. And as far as I could tell via performance comparisons, the Snapdragon in this headset is better than it. It is stronger than it. And it is a mobile chipset. This isn't really a fair fight, though, okay? Because remember, something like the Nintendo Switch is just a traditional video game platform. It doesn't have to do VR stuff. This headset, using about the same chipset, has to do 90 hertz instead of 60 if it wants to prevent motion sickness. And that means that we have less time in a given frame in order to run and render everything. 2D games, 30 hertz is actually fine. You don't even need 60. For VR, you have to do about double the work as well because you have to render every scene twice, once for each eye. The eyes are similar. You can optimize some things between them, but not everything. For VR, you are also in a very battery conscious, energy conscious, power saving situation. So with 2D games, hey, I'm plugged in to a machine right now, to energy. I can use it as fast as I want. I can just blast everything. But no, for VR, we can only run for a certain amount of time. So we have to be very careful about battery life. We're going to be very underpowered, okay? As a result of all these things, you get stuff like this. Does anyone remember when this tweet was made, this image? Mr. Zuckerberg was announcing the addition of, I think, French objects and French environments into his VR chat-like software, Horizon Worlds. When he posted this, people got very creeped out by the character, okay? Right? This is not an appealing character design, all right? It kind of shows Zuckerberg as a little bit inhuman, which just is a bit unlucky for him, as he kind of has that mystique just in everyday life. But the environments also don't look good. The environments are not even using the same art style. They look extraordinarily simple. And this is something that you actually see a lot across other pieces of software too. I think this is Rec Room right here. And it's a challenge. These headsets that we're using, the Quest line, are very underpowered. They're using mobile phone chipsets. And so if you look at the Oculus Store, all these projects, some of them look pretty good, but all of them use kind of a more cartoony, sometimes anime art style. Why? It's because those art styles can still look good, but at a lower level of detail, a lower level of computational complexity. This app is just using 3D 60 video, which is just flat out cheating, okay, from a rendering perspective. Everything else, those humanoids right there, again, it's low poly. Jurassic Park game is low poly and cell shaded, cartoony style, okay? And so that is simply the situation until further notice, until our mobile small chipsets become better, more battery efficient. That's just going to be how it is. That's not the end of the world, because low poly art styles, cartoony art styles can look gorgeous when done well, all right? And there are a lot of great games on these devices. But it is simply the situation. If you want to play a luxurious, right, beautiful, realistic game like Half-Life Alyx, okay, unfortunately, you're going to have to hook up to a gaming PC, all right? When you go to run your Unreal experiments, okay, your Unreal stuff doesn't run on the headset, right? It runs on the machine, and the images and data is pumped into the headset for you to enjoy. Okay? That's why you have to hook up before Unreal will actually make it run. Okay? Yes. Yeah, you need a dedicated GPU just to get the minimum here. And that's beyond what most mobile chipsets can do. Okay? So, right? Some of these questions have been knocked down. You don't necessarily need a gaming-grade PC anymore to enjoy some pretty good VR experiences. But if you want realism, you still do need it. Headsets, being relatively new, leads to their expensive cost. But that is something that just changes over time, right? Things that are new will become old. The pipelines, IOE, the industrial operations that get those things made and manufactured efficiently, those things get ironed out. Economies of scale become a thing, and you get very cheap results. Okay? Anyone know what this is? This is a classic. Yes?
Is that the Labo?
Oh, it's not Labo, but Labo's kind of similar. What is it? Google Cardboard. Google Cardboard had a really interesting role to play in the evolution and adoption of VR. This problem of VR being super expensive and hard to get into, everyone knew this was VR's perhaps biggest problem. You can't really show someone over an advertisement what VR is like, okay? Because advertisements, commercials, right, banner ads on a website, they all use 2D monitors. So how do you get this across to people? Well, some developers at Google came up with Google Cardboard. This was a package of cardboard you could have sent to you for about $40. And you would fold it in certain places, and you would attach it and glue it in other places. And then your own phone, would slip into the end here, and your phone, your mobile device, would become your GPU, your CPU, and your display, okay? And your audio as well. And it worked surprisingly okay. It gave you the sensation of VR. It gave you gyro. I don't remember if it gave you translation or not. But this is how a lot of people experienced VR for the first time, because this is how people could afford it, all right? They would then later come out with their own $80 headset, which was the same idea, but much more luxurious, called the Google Daydream. And one of my earliest assistants for EECS 494 ended up working on that, okay? So over time, the prices came down, right? We started to see solid headsets being given away at $299, which is a very competitive price, good stuff. But we've also seen that there's a bit of a barrier here, right? Because headset prices have gone back up. How much is a MetaQuest 3 these days? Anyone know? Did we look that up? How much is it? MetaQuest 3, $299. Look at that, MetaQuest 3S. Oh, is that like a compromised one? Yeah. What's wrong with it?
I don't know, but it's like a light version.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like the iPhone light.
when I think like S, I think like super. Like this is the souped up edition. But I think maybe it's supposed to be in small or something. Yeah. Anyway, you want the full Meta 3 experience, MetaQuest 3. It's going to be $500. That is tough. That's very tough. Okay. And so prices have gone back up, all right? But for what you're getting, it's a pretty reasonable deal still, okay? And so a lot of the problems that faced the original DevKit 1 in this wave of VR became solved over time, okay? Solved by innovations, interestingly, in other areas. These problems, many of them don't get solved if the mobile chipset industry didn't take off, okay? There's a timeline where mobile phones, where smartphones didn't blow up until many years later. And as a result, the high-quality chips coming out of that industry aren't available for VR, okay? So pretty good progress for a decade, nonetheless. And there are some rays of hope, okay? We have seen headlines like this, especially around the holidays, VR seems to come back to life, okay? The Quest 2 VR headset had a hell of a good holiday season. How the metaverse won Christmas. One of the most telling ones is that during the holidays, it is somewhat common for the Oculus app or the Meta app, I think these days, to actually take over and beat out TikTok, YouTube, okay, during the holidays. And if that's happening consistently, you can't call it dead, okay? There are rays of hope. And Apple has entered the arena. Now, I'm not sure what Apple's going to do. Maybe they will come out with a much cheaper Vision, okay, not Vision Pro, but Vision soon. And it will be not $3,500, it will be $900 or $800. Or maybe they will simply give up, okay? I'm not sure what they're going to do. Apple doesn't seem like the kind of company that gives up often. I remember their watch didn't initially have a whole lot of application, but people eventually found that it was fantastic for fitness. So who knows what they're going to do. But the VR market has continued to move forward and solve problems. But you might say that, actually, I'm going to ask you that. What are the big problems that you think face VR right now? You can't say cables. Cables, they're kind of toast, okay? Now, you still sometimes have to use them for luxurious experiences. You can't say nausea, okay? Well, you can say that a bit, but it's mostly gone away. Even price has come down. You can get a reasonable headset for, we just saw, $300. So what are the big issues? What is going to drive further adoption, maybe even in the next wave of VR?
A lot of people who wouldn't buy a headset have no reason to because they don't need it or want it for anything.
A lot of people buy VR headsets for gaming experiences. Some people buy headsets for medical experiences, for training, right? But what problems does VR hardware currently have? What do people not like about it? Yes. It's heavy. Right? It is much lighter. I was at the IHDA monthly meetup last Thursday, and I put on for the first time ever a MetaQuest 3, and woo-wee, nice. It felt incredible, okay? Better even than the MetaQuest Pros in front of you, okay? It kind of has a really interesting design. It kind of fits the top of your head and not on the very back, and it just kind of slides in like a glove. Very, very nice, but it's still not perfect, right? You still do feel it on your face. It is fairly light. I forgot it was on my face after a little bit of gameplay. But, it's not perfect, okay? What else? What do we need to fix with modern VR hardware? What problems do we still have? Yes. What about battery life? Okay? You just can't use these things for a ton of time. I think, what is the battery life on a MetaQuest 3? Anyone know? Let's try battery life. Ooh, ouch, 2.2 hours. That is not good at all, okay? If you want to do anything more extensive, or if you want to play with friends, hand it off to someone, like you're going to be handing them a dead battery pretty quickly, okay? What else? Yes?
The controllers aren't always super expressive of what you actually want to do with your hand.
Yeah, they are very expressive compared to a normal gamepad, right? For traditional 2D games. But it's still a bit of a pain, right? We don't have individual finger control, for instance, for the most part. And so, like, expressiveness is a bit of a problem. I would say also processing power is a huge problem, okay? For several reasons. Number one, we're stuck to these cartoony, like less realistic art styles in the experiences we have. But also, the processing power and the battery life situation forces the headset to be big, okay? The dream, right? I know for a fact that people will happily wear these, okay, every day. They will pay a lot of money to wear these every day, okay? They have a killer app. What is the killer app of this headset? What is it? I can't see if you're raising your hand. Just say it if you are. Yes, Sean?
Good vision.
Yeah, you know what the killer app of this headset is? I don't walk into the street and die. It's kind of important. I would pay a lot of money to not walk into the street accidentally and get myself seriously injured. Okay? And so you have a well-defined, well-understood target that if we can somehow miniaturize the headset to get close to this in terms of lightness, in terms of styling, okay, it's going to take off. It will win if it can get to that point. The question is, how can we get processing to be powerful enough on such a tiny headset? Can we get really tiny chips? Can we somehow squeeze a battery that can power those chips for several hours at least into these little frames? Can we do that? Currently, the answer is no. Okay? A question for you, the cloud, streaming, Google Stadia. What if we didn't have onboard computing? What if we just had a little Wi-Fi card and it beamed things, or a cellular card, and it beamed the images and the processing and your inputs out to some server? The server quickly beams the images back. Latency becomes the problem. So on high-quality modern networks in dense cities, it's good enough, right? It can get you at least 60 frames very consistently. But networks out in the countryside or in smaller cities aren't always good enough to support off-board computing like that, okay? So infrastructure and network connectivity become a problem. And so you see that there are certain caps that VR seems to have hit, okay? And it might take technological revolutions in other areas and in other industries before a new fourth wave of VR can really take off and start to approach something like this. But that's how technology goes, okay? You know, AI was famous for its ridiculous waves, right? Every, 15 years, every decade or two, AI hype would reappear, and we would get some new algorithms. We would get some new implementations that were really cool. But eventually you would say, well, this current AI, it's cool, but I was hoping to have a human, right, by now. I was hoping to have human level AI, and it's just not, okay? It's just a pathfinding algorithm that allows some computer AI players in a video game to, find my player character quickly. That's it. Can't do anything more. Even today, with the latest revolution, LLMs, right? Chatbots, GPT, DeepSeek. Even today, you'll hear, do any of you feel a little bit of burnout on these AI assistants? A tiny bit? When I first started talking to them, I thought, oh, this is it. This is it, okay? No more waves needed. And now when I talk to an AI about anything that's not just look something up for me or give me an example, whenever I ask it questions, whenever I ask it to design a game for me, I end up rolling my eyes. Okay, another one of these. And it's not creative. It's not very interesting, okay? I've tasted that AI flavor, 2025 edition, and it just tastes like 2024. Anyway, This is to say that AI has had many waves like this as well, and every time a new wave occurs, usually brought on by new tech advances elsewhere, used in an interesting way, you get an explosion for a while until inevitably people get a little bit bored, they get underwhelmed, okay? LLMs will probably be in use heavily until the next AI wave happens. But will LLMs dramatically improve for the next 10 years? It's hard to say. Maybe the next wave arrives really quickly, maybe it doesn't. But that's kind of where VR appears to be with its hardware. It has hit some brick walls. Incremental improvements are still coming, and the situation is impressive. For the next decade, people will be using VR. They'll be liking VR, okay? But it's just not taken over, okay? And it's going to take probably some more technological improvements or a killer app to be discovered for it to really break through, all right? But hey, that's what our job is, okay? As academics, we have to get out there and we have to experiment, okay? That's where the breakthroughs come from. That's what powers the next wave, okay? Does anyone have any questions or comments about VR? My knowledge of the hardware side of things is limited, okay? But there are talks you can find on YouTube that go a little bit deeper into the hardware side of things. One really interesting tidbit that I learned about, but I didn't put into this lecture slide, I should put it in there, is one of the really big insights that Palmer Luckey and the original Oculus dev team had that created the DevKit 1 was that they were having a hard time getting high-quality lenses manufactured and made that could really give you a very high-quality image. But what they discovered was that they could use cheap lenses. Normally look terrible. They provide just an awful image. But they could correct things in software, thus transforming a really crappy lens that gave you a terrible picture into one that actually, this looks pretty good. Actually, this looks great, okay? And so they're able to dramatically lower costs by making cheaper components work really well, okay? So anyway, that kind of stuff, you can find a lot of interviews like that on YouTube, and I encourage you to go look for them if this topic is of interest to you. Okay, I don't believe I have anything more I want to talk about today. These shorter lectures, again, I apologize for them. They get more content every year, and it will soon be full, but that's just what a kind of newish course is like. When we get to Project 2, we will be talking a lot about Unity. We will be diving into Mapbox, and I will be kind of helping you build out the early parts of your Pokemon Go variant, Ann Arbor Go, and hopefully you'll enjoy that. Okay, you have 1 week remaining until the end of Project 1. We're going to do a film 1 week from now, and I think that's it. Okay, I hope you look forward to it. That spring break is coming up faster than you know it, so I hope you look forward to that as well. Hopefully, the course hasn't been super heavy for you. It's not designed to be super heavy. But a lot of people really get into these projects, okay? It's a bit of a tough thing. In 494, have you ever heard of the law of induced demand? Have you ever heard of a phenomena that happens in Los Angeles where, if you've never been to Los Angeles, there's not a whole lot of public transit, not a lot of rail. They have gigantic freeways. Freeways that have like 7 or 8 or 9 lanes. Well, when traffic gets really bad, people who use these freeways, people who drive goes down because people don't want to deal with the traffic. So what do? We add an additional lane to our freeways, which creates additional capacity. Unfortunately, instead of improving the driving experience for everyone, this convinces people who were not driving to start driving again, and the additional lane gets filled up. The additional capacity induces additional demand, which then consumes the capacity and keeps the situation at a nasty state. So that's the kind of thing that we have in 494, actually, where we do put in a lot of effort to make the course easier and less time-consuming. But the students who are in 494, they're in 494 because they want to dump time into making a great game. So the more time we save them, the student turns around and takes that time saved and puts it back into their game, adding more features, polishing things, and making ever greater games. The stress level that they face maintains at an equilibrium, and thus we're unable to make the course easier. Because the moment we do, they make it harder on purpose, for fun. And that's just the kind of person who takes 494. It's a good time. I wonder to what extent that happens in this course. I don't think it happens as much. But if you have extra time and you dump it back into your project, these are really cool projects. You're doing a great job. From everything I can see, you're doing a wonderful job. So, okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop talking. I'm going to begin office hours now. If you're having trouble with any of your tasks for a P1 milestone, P1 alpha, or your P1 gold, please raise your hand. I'll be walking around and I'd be happy to help you out, okay? All right, take care, everyone, for those of you not sticking around, and we'll see you next week on Monday, all right? Take care, all. Everyone online, I will see you later as well. Bye-bye.